Indiana Disability History Project, Indiana Institute on Disability and Community, Indiana University, spreading the word about the ADA. Christine Dolberg.
National Council on Disability had the first draft of the ADA. There were findings about people with disabilities and what their status was in life and their independence, which was pretty nil. And in the back of the book, as an addendum, there was a first draft of the ADA. And that's where the very beginning of the ADA started, was with the National Council on Disability. And this is my recollection. And then we were asked by our because we're Developmental Disabilities Council, and there's one in every state. The organization that represents all councils with disabilities was asked to point people in all the states to help spread the word about the ADA and get people activated. Well, I don't know if you remember Costa Miller, who was the executive director of INARF. Well, he was on the board of the President's Committee on Employment, and he was the chair of the council at the time. And so through that connection with Justin Dart, who was chair of the President's Committee, and Costa was on the board, we were the primary agency that organized the rallies when Justin Dart came into town under Costa's encouragement, since he was the chair. So that was kind of the main connection. So our job was to find a venue and get it all set up and make sure all the advocates were invited and that there was sufficient room for them, and then even to try and get media coverage of the rallies and the information that was being presented and given. We looked around to find, of course, an accessible venue and where Justin could be comfortable, and made sure that we had that we had interpreters, that we had Braille, that we had materials that made the venue really accessible. And then we invited all of the major disability organizations to send folks, and it really turned out very well. I mean, there was a good crowd. He was very pleased with the people that came out to hear the committee talk, and they were pleased to hear from the folks in Indiana who had issues related to disability access and inclusion, and what we wanted, what we thought was important in regard to the ADA.
Rick Edwards.
Well, once Justin was there, we sat down and we had town meetings where we actually heard from a number of different people in a lot of different communities what the issues were, what was bothering them, were some of the problems and barriers that they were dealing with. And basically that is what developed the ADA, was hearing that people were having problems with employment, Title I. They were having problems with transportation, Title II. They were having problems in their local stores, Title III. State and local governments were creating barriers for them. So all of those stories that we heard laid the groundwork and the foundation for the ADA itself. And so we were able to not only hear from people as to what the real problems were, but we were able to put that into an act and actually try and address some of those questions, some of those problems, and remove some of those barriers.
We knew who came. I mean, we had a list of everybody who came. And then when the work began on trying to rally the disability community in Indiana in order to get the legislation actually passed, and making sure that no weakening amendments happen, which were happening. I mean, there were 1 million of them introduced. That's where you start. You start with your list in organizing. Then you know the people that are interested in the topic, and then you get the word out to them, and they in turn contact their congressmen and their senators, and that's what we did. That's what we used in order to get the information out. And that was way before the internet. We didn't have the internet back then. So there was no email. We could not send this stuff out on email, which is so convenient today. We had to use telephone calls, mailings, and usually there wasn't time for that. So we used fax machines to get the information out. We used to have these broadcast faxes that we'd put in, with 50 or 60 names, and then put another one out with 50 or 60 more names. To get the information out on what the provisions of the ADA were, and what the best thoughts of the national folks were on what were weakening and what were to be supported. And people were really encouraged to then respond and write and talk to their own legislators about what they felt were the good issues or the points that they felt that they wanted to support or not.
I can remember licking a lot of stamps and doing a lot of envelope stuffing and that sort of thing to try and get the word out about things, and making a lot of phone calls. I can remember, the ear getting so red and swollen that you had to switch ears. So, and by word of mouth, we had a lot of folks that would just simply, go to conferences like the Governor's Planning Council conference and just simply say, hey, this is something that's out there.
Music, Redwood Trail. Recorded at the 2009 Indiana Governor's Council for People with Disabilities Conference. Produced by Indiana Institute on Disability and Community, Center for Health Equity. Funded in part by the Indiana Governor's Council for People with Disabilities. Copyright 2018, the Trustees of Indiana University.